Hey, what's up guys? Today I'm going to show you how to get super professional looking finishes using lacquer. Stay tuned.
It's so soft, so nice, so smooth.
Before we get started, I want to quickly touch on finish prep and why it's important to get the best quality results whenever you're applying any type of finish, whether it be a spray or roll-on. With all of my sanding processes, I take my pieces up to 180 grit 95% of the time, and I start at 80 grit if I'm coming off of, say, a router sled like I did with this table, or most of the time 120 grit if it's fresh off the planer when my planer knives are sharp. You kind of have to tailor this to how smooth of a finish you get off of your milling machines and go from there. The steps are your lowest grit, so say 80 grit, 120, 150, 180. I go in this order because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to eliminate scratch patterns on the wood and on the epoxy in this case. And if you skip these grits, what ends up happening is you sand a lot longer than you need to, and you go through more paper because you're trying to burn through more 150 grit paper to get rid of 80 grit scratches when 120 would do it a lot faster. For all of my finish applications, I'm actually using my Fuji Q5 spray system with a gravity feed gun. There's a couple of details on HVLP systems that I want to go over really quickly before we start spraying. So each gun has different adjustments on there, and those adjustments are how you get the correct atomization of your fluid and you get your finish to lay down correctly. On the back of this particular gun, there's a fluid adjustment knob, and you turn that left or right, and what that does is that adjusts how much fluid comes from your cup and comes out your nozzle. The next adjustment on this one is a fan control knob. So what that'll do is it'll adjust your spray pattern depending on your application. So you can go with a really wide fan, or you can go with a very small dot depending on what you're doing. All you do is you just adjust it back and forth here. It's pretty sensitive, so you just play with it and then get it set right. The other adjustment is just the nozzle itself. You can rotate the nozzle and adjust the direction of your fan pattern. So whenever the nozzle is horizontal, your fan pattern is going to be vertical, and then when it's vertical, your fan pattern is going to be horizontal. The reason why is there's air jets in here, and the air jets blow the air on the fluid nozzle on the very tip that's coming out, and that atomizes everything. The last adjustment you need to be mindful of is the airflow. So on this particular unit, I can actually adjust the fan speed with this knob and get a different amount of PSI to my gun. Other guns, you have to adjust it with the hose of the coupling by just a little valve. Before I'll actually spray finish, what I'll do is I will set my gun up and I'll do a few quick test passes on a piece of MDF or even on this paper that I have sitting over my bench, just to make sure that my fan pattern is the size that I want it, which will ultimately make my life a lot easier down the line. So when I'm actually spraying a workpiece, I want you to notice a couple of things. The width of my fan pattern, the rate in which that I'm crossing the grain while I'm spraying is consistent, and also the distance from my workpiece to my nozzle. All of these things are actually what help the finish lay down evenly across your work surface. If you go too fast while you're laying finish down, you'll get a little more splatter rather than a smooth film finish because you're not putting enough fluid on the workpiece. Consequently, if you go too slow when you're applying finish with your gun, what can end up happening is the finish can puddle up, and some finishes actually won't cure properly because there's too much of a film that all the solvent cannot leave the finish that you laid down, and it can result in finish failure. So it's very important to be consistent with how fast you're spraying your finish and putting the correct amount of material down while you do that. How do you know if you're getting a thick enough coat of finish? Well, you use what's called a wet film thickness gauge every time you spray a coat of finish. This will help you dial your gun in, but also let you know if you have enough material on the workpiece. So you spray your coat of finish, you take this gauge, you press it down on your workpiece, and you see these little notches here. Whichever one is the last one that's wet, that tells you how thick of a film finish you have. You can then use that and reference the manufacturer's data sheet of all your finishes and actually know if you're putting down the correct amount of material for your finish. So now that you got your first coat of finish down, the next step in this process is actually finish sand. Generally speaking, you almost always have to sand in between coats of finish after you apply them. The reason is while it's drying, little dust nibs in the air can form, and the inconsistencies from your spraying finish or any little thing that could get in there to prevent it from having a nice silky smooth surface happens. So finish sanding is a really easy thing to do, but a lot of people overdo it. So the process that I use is I take a flexible 320 grit softback sanding pad and I lightly scuff sand the entire surface. What you're trying to get here is you're trying to get a nice white powder from your finish. If you're getting streaks in the finish, sandpaper, what that actually means is your finish is not completely dry, so you need to let it sit for a little bit longer and then come back and sand it again. With different finishes, how you handle the dust afterwards is completely different. With lacquer, conversion varnish, and other heavily solvent-based finishes, what ends up happening is you can just respray another coat of finish and it will activate that dust, redissolve it with a thinner, and it'll just become part of your finish and you won't get the cloudiness. Some finishes like a wipe-on polyurethane or a water-based polyurethane or anything like that, it won't necessarily reactivate the dust, so you have to blow and wipe those off before applying another coat of finish. All of this is different product to product, so what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to do a little bit of testing on your end and figure out what you need to do after you apply your finish and you finish sand. And just to prove to you that I actually know what I'm talking about, these are the kind of results that I get every time I finish a piece of furniture. Check it. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If there were any questions that I didn't answer, please feel free to drop them below in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Additionally, all of my links to social are going to be down below, so you can follow me there and check out what else I'm doing. Have a great day.